Hello, everyone. All right, welcome. I'm just hopping on for maybe like 20, 30 minutes to answer some questions about AP Lang the night before the exam. So feel free to ask any questions that you have in the chat. I'm live on YouTube and TikTok simultaneously, so I'll be checking the chat for both. Hey, Parker, how are you doing? All right. So thank you to everyone who joined the session that I just had over on Light Hall with Tim Freitas from the Garden of English. We just answered a ton of questions on there. And I know there were still some questions that people had. So I figured I would hop on YouTube and also TikTok to answer those questions. So welcome, everybody. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'll be on for about 25 minutes or so. And then I have something else that I have to do. I have a tutoring session. I might hop back on after that if people are still on, but I do have a break coming up. So let's see. Are you going to go over each of the essays? I can. So if you are not sure about the different essays, if you feel like you haven't really talked about them, one thing to do would be to check out the playlist on my channel because I have lots of videos about those. But I'd be happy to answer specific questions about the different essays as well. They're pretty different, but synthesis and argument are kind of similar. So a lot of the tips for synthesis also apply to argument as well. How would you recommend creating a conversation between sources? Okay, so for the synthesis essay, we talk about this a lot, like a conversation of sources. So let's talk about what that looks like. So think about conversations that you have with other people. You build off of what they say, you elaborate on it, you might even contradict them at one point. So we want to look for those kinds of relationships with the sources. So I tell my students to try to pair the sources together. So as they're reading through the sources, I'll ask them, okay, does this relate to any of the other sources? How? Like, is it similar? Is it different? That kind of thing. So when we create a paragraph, if we can, we try to put two sources in that paragraph. So we'll have a topic sentence that is our claim, and then we'll bring up some evidence from one of the sources, and we'll provide commentary about that evidence. And then you'll use a transition word like similarly or conversely or furthermore. Or likewise, and then you'll bring up evidence from a different source to extend your argument, have more commentary in a concluding sentence. So that's just one thing to consider with the conversation is that you're not looking at them as individual sources so much as you're looking at how the perspectives overlap, if that makes sense. So that was just a quick tip for synthesis. So I'm live on YouTube and TikTok right now. So I'm going to go back and forth between the two platforms to answer questions. So feel free to put your questions in the chat. And I'm on Central Time, so it's 8:36 right now. I'll stay on until 9 p.m. And then I'll hopefully hop back on later tonight. But I have a tutoring session at 9 that I have to attend. Okay, so let's see. On TikTok, how do you ensure you get the evidence point? Oh, like the fourth evidence point. Okay, the big thing is it's really the commentary that's the difference between a 3 and a 4 in row B for all the essays, in my opinion. So you want to make sure that you are proving all claims with evidence and commentary. So for example, for rhetorical analysis, if you analyze one choice really well, but then you have another choice that's kind of weaker, you can still get a 3 out of 4. But if both are equally strong, you have even evidence and commentary, you could get a 4 because you've proven both claims equally. So we really want to make sure, as far as getting that fourth point, that we're supporting all claims with evidence and commentary, and not just that it's there, but that it's developed and it's thorough. Because we'll see a lot of like limited commentary. So limited commentary usually results in a 2 on the evidence and commentary row. And that's like perhaps commentary that's like really simplistic or repetitive. It just kind of says like the obvious. It's not really adding any deeper thought. So that would be my suggestion for that, is just like make sure you're supporting all your claims. Someone said, for rhetorical analysis, what if I can't remember the names of the devices? Can you still explain them and get points? Absolutely. In fact, you don't need to name drop fancy devices. Use active verbs. So repeats, provides an example, even stuff like they flatter the audience or they criticize the audience, things like that. So yeah, you don't need to use fancy names. So just describing what they're doing is totally fine. In fact, honestly, a lot of readers prefer that. It just reads better anyway. I'm genuinely cramming for the rhetorical analysis. What do I do if I blank out? What are things I should be looking for? Okay, so the most common rhetorical choices, and they're not guaranteed to be in everything, but things that you should look out for. First of all, ask yourself, what are they doing? What are they doing in the beginning of the passage, the middle, and the end? Answer that question and you've got a rhetorical choice. But common ones would be repetition, word choice, and toner and everything, and they work together. Examples, anecdotes, description or detail, imagery, comparison and contrast are popular. So those are some that are frequently in there. So it's good to know some rhetorical choices, but just ask yourself, what are they doing? And that should hopefully help you do that. So those are the best ones. I have a few videos on my channel about that if you guys are curious, but those are the ones that I think are most common. But seriously, just ask yourself, what are they doing? And that would answer. I'm nervous for rhetorical analysis. Yeah. So definitely like for rhetorical analysis, the big thing, I think really the big thing for all three essays is the commentary. But if you're studying for rhetorical analysis, really like read some past exam essays. They have some free samples online from the College Board. Look at the commentary because I feel like that's the make it or break it point. So for the commentary, you really want to talk about like how the choice that they're making helps with their message, argument, or purpose, and like why they made that choice for their audience on that particular occasion. But I have a ton of rhetorical analysis videos if you're looking for more info. Let's see, let me answer a quick question for TikTok. Okay, how do you get the sophistication point? There's different ways. Vivid and descriptive writing style, that's not for everybody, but you can use higher level words, vary your syntax, things like that. I feel like that one's the one I see the least, though. The one I see most common for sophistication, which sophistication in and of itself is rare, but the most common way that my students earn it is by situating the issue in a broader context. So for argument and synthesis, ask yourself, why does this issue matter? And you can connect it to real world events and current events, stuff like that. Think about like the short-term and long-term implications of the issue. Think about like who is helped or harmed by the issue or whatever it is you're talking about. That can be a way to kind of dig deeper, because usually when students attempt to do that, even if they don't earn the sophistication point, because sophistication has to be current throughout, they at least get better commentary. Something else for rhetorical analysis, because that one's kind of different, is ask yourself, how is this message or argument relevant today? Because they write the test multiple years in advance. So they're not going to give you something from a speech or something from 2022. So you could look at like how the message or argument is relevant today. I would put that in your conclusion if you're going to go for that, but that would be one way to do it. Any tips for the test overall? Pacing. Pacing is super important. So for multiple choice, you have 1 hour to answer 45 questions. Each question is essentially worth 1 point. They're not weighted differently. It's not like hard ones are worth more points. So for multiple choice, answer all questions, even if it's a guess. Use process of elimination. The first 2 passages are reading. The second 2 passages are writing. I find the writing questions a lot easier. So if you're spending the whole hour working, I would say no more than 35 minutes on the reading and about 25 for the writing, just as a general rule of thumb, but answer every question. If you have to guess, choose one letter and stick with it. I tell my students to choose A, what was it? A and D, I think, are like sometimes more common. There's this whole rumor about like C is the most common. It's not, but I tell them to choose like A or D, or like if they, or something like that. There's reasons behind it, but nothing I can prove. I don't know any secret information. So I'm not like trying to tell you all like something other than A and D are perhaps like better choices than just C. I don't know. I probably made that way more complicated than I had to. For the FRQs, the essays, you can answer them in any order. And so play to your strengths. Most students do the synthesis first because it's the most time consuming. But you want to write at least a thesis and ideally 2 body paragraphs per essay. You can write 3 body paragraphs if you want to. Conclusions are not necessary, but pacing is crucial. And use all your time. As a teacher, one of my biggest pet peeves is like on standardized testing is watching kids, like when they have essays to write, watching them sit there and like not be writing, just like have their booklet closed and like they're done. Cause I'm like, there's always something you can do. There's always more commentary you can add or something like that. So anyway, let's see. Let me answer a couple questions here on YouTube. I'm trying to go back and forth between YouTube and TikTok. Let's see. I saw that Tim from Garden of English suggested we do topic sentence, evidence 1, evidence 2, commentary. Do you think that's a good way? Okay, so first of all, I support Tim from the Garden of English. He and I are good friends. We actually just did a live together earlier tonight. I would, if you like his structure, I would follow that. I have a very similar structure. We both preach the value of a topic sentence. I did a video on that recently if you're curious about topic sentences. But yes, you need evidence and commentary for everything. So I say like topic sentence, evidence, commentary, concluding sentence. That's just like a formula. Not each of those things, they're not all one sentence. Like you need more commentary than evidence. So, but yeah, Tim from the Garden of English, he knows his stuff. So absolutely. For writing, what makes an answer right? And what's a trap answer? So for the writing multiple choice, okay, there's different types of questions. So there's transition word questions. Those I feel like if you know what the words mean, those are usually pretty obvious. A couple words that might be confusing. Moreover, is like furthermore. I just feel like no one says moreover when they're speaking. So if you see moreover, it's like furthermore. And then one that might come up that's a little bit more confusing is subsequently. That one's after. But usually the transition words are okay. Just ask yourself like what the relationship is between the sentences. I would say there's some questions about should the writer add the sentence or like should they keep it or delete it? We always want to make sure that if we're adding a sentence that there's value to it. So basically, like, is it providing clarity? Is it providing a definition? We only want to add it if it's going to be useful. We don't add sentences that are extraneous or that are repetitive. So I would say sometimes it's just like sort of the nuance of the answer choice. But I don't know of any like concrete trap answer choices for the writing. I feel like the reading though, there's some. So for the reading, the trap answers are usually like, it's only partly true. Like they might say like this and like half of it's true, half of it's not. If it's not entirely true, it's not your right answer. The right answer has to actually answer the question. That might sound really obvious, but some of the answer choices that sound good are like answering like another part of the passage or like they're answering it, but it's not actually, it's a good answer, but it's not an answer to the question. Or they're just like too broad. Or they use like really charged language. Like there was one question my students and I were looking at where like it said the word like manipulates or something. And then the other answer choice was just like appeals to something else. And the answer that they wanted was appeals in that case because the writer wasn't actually manipulating anyone. So it might have sounded like a better answer choice. It might have sounded more precise, but the writer wasn't actually manipulating anyone. So that's when like we don't always choose stuff just because it's fancy. All right, let's answer a couple questions from TikTok because I've got about 15 minutes right now. I'm going to try to hop on later tonight, but I don't want you guys staying up all night and cramming for the exam. You got to sleep. You got to eat a good breakfast in the morning, all that stuff. Okay, what is the difference between specific and general evidence? So specific, you have to be able to explain it well. Generalized evidence is stuff like most teenagers do this or celebrities do this, and you're not really giving like a concrete example. So we want to like, I'm trying to think of one, like if you just said like, I don't know, movies are a great form of entertainment. They help people escape into an alternate reality. That's general. But if you're like, this specific movie is a great form of entertainment because, and it helps people to, escape this reality because that's much more specific. So the word because is crucial. It sounds really simple, but it's a great way to develop your commentary for all 3 essays. So if you're struggling with commentary, ask yourself why or so what and put because, and that can really help. All right, let's answer a question from YouTube right now. What should I have for breakfast tomorrow, guys? That's funny. But serious answer to that though is like nothing greasy or sugary. If you can have it. So yeah, essays are 55% of your composite. Multiple choice is 45%. So there's like a conversion, but it's like 100 points total. So literally each multiple choice question is worth 1 point, and then they multiply your essay score by like, it's like 3.0556 or something like that. You don't need to worry about that right now, but the essays are weighted a little bit more. So those can have a big impact. Um, what kinds of questions should I be answering for rhetorical analysis? So ask yourself, what is the writer doing in the beginning, middle, and end? Because that can help you divide up the passage. Ask yourself, what does this choice reveal about the speaker, like their needs, beliefs, desires, or values? Big question to answer is, why does the speaker make this choice for this audience on this occasion? And then, like, how does this choice help them achieve their purpose or their convey their message or arguments? Okay, so I'm going to try to answer. I got like 10 minutes left. I'm going to try to answer as many of these as I can. Do we need a counterclaim? No, you do not. You can have one, but honestly, like, a lot of times the counterclaims fall flat. So I would just say it's not worth it unless it's really convincing. Just prove your point. Seriously, it sounds simple, but like literally like 2 body paragraphs where you're proving your claim is okay. Thank you for the hearts over on TikTok. All right, let's see. How would you suggest mentioning things like TV and movies? You do need to give a little bit of background. Don't assume that your reader knows that. Also, that goes for like common things too. Like we see a lot of like Edison and the light bulb is randomly popular in different essays. MLK, Columbus, like even though most people know who Martin Luther King Jr. is and who Columbus is and what they did, you still have to tell us. So part of that is helping explain why your evidence is significant. So you have to tell us what you want us to know about those people and then tell us why that example proves your point. So use verbs like highlights, illustrates, suggests, reveals, demonstrates, and that helps you tell us like what we're supposed to know about that example. Do you have to concede and refute in synthesis and argument? No, you can, but you do not have to. If you are struggling with that, I would not even bother with it. It's not necessarily going to help your score. It can, but like you can write a totally good essay without having a concession and refutation or counterclaim. Can you use I? You can use personal experience technically in synthesis. I'll explain how in a second, but it's more common in argument. If you're writing about personal experience, yes, please use personal pronouns. But if you're writing about personal experience, and I do have a video about this on my YouTube channel if you want more information, by the way, but you want to make sure it's a meaningful experience. So tell us the challenges or like the personal growth that came out of it, but you can use I or we if it's like a story about multiple people. That's fine for argument. It kind of works for synthesis if like it's somehow related to a source. So like for instance, last year, the prompt was about like cursive handwriting. And one of the sources was like this picture of like those sheets you get where you trace all the letters in cursive. And so some students wrote about how they said learning cursive can be really tedious because students have to practice the same letter over and over, and their time would be better spent on like other tasks. And then they cited like the source. It was like source B. And then they said, like, for example, when I was in 3rd grade, we spent 20 minutes a day on cursive writing and like then they told their personal experience, but it was connected to a source. So you can use it in those two. It really doesn't belong in rhetorical analysis. I can think of a few exceptions, but it's really not worth going into. But for rhetorical analysis, for a conclusion, what you can do is talk about how the issue, like whatever they're talking about, like the message or argument is relevant to today, but you don't really need personal pronouns for that. How many paragraphs does an essay have to have? At minimum, shoot for an intro and 2 body paragraphs. Extreme worst case scenario, an intro and 1 body paragraph. You can still score a 3 out of 6, possibly even a 4 out of 6 with an intro and 1 body paragraph. It just has to be a really good body paragraph. You do not need a long intro, so you can just write a thesis. If you want to develop it more, that's totally fine. But if you're pressed for time, just write a defensible thesis and write 1 to 2 body paragraphs. Really focus on the evidence and commentary. Use words like because, highlights, suggests, things like that. Conclusions are not necessary. How do you create a line of reasoning? It starts with your thesis. You have to have a central claim that you're trying to prove. You need strong topic sentences, evidence and commentary in each paragraph, a concluding sentence of that paragraph to tie back to your thesis. Those are super helpful. Good transitions help with your line of reasoning too. So use transition words within your paragraphs and really create connections with your topic sentences. I made a video. It's pretty current on my channel. I've uploaded a lot of videos in the past week though. But if you type in like Coach Hall writes topic sentences in YouTube or just in Google, it should come up. And I go over some sentence frames in that help create a line of reasoning. So if you have a few minutes of your time, that would be a video that I would recommend. I have a few line of reasoning videos, but the topic sentences are a way to kind of connect your essay. Can you discuss author's tone? You can write about it in your essays for sure. The tone is their attitude toward the subject, and word choice creates tone. So if you're analyzing like what type of words they're using, or like maybe like their imagery, if there is imagery, something like that, you can definitely mention tone, and that can help as well. When is the next live? I'm going to try to come back on. It's like my time. I'm in Central Time Zone. It's 8:54 right now. I'm busy from 9 to 10, but I will try to come back on at 10 p.m. Central, which is 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're on the East Coast, you should probably be sleeping at that point, but I know not everybody is. So yeah, I'll try to come back on later tonight on both TikTok and YouTube and simultaneously do that. Just because I know some people have last minute questions. What are some good words for rhetorical analysis? Oh, hold on, it went up. I think it said thesis. So for your rhetorical analysis thesis, use strong verbs. You can say things like repetition, but it's better to say repeats instead of comparison, compares. So just use strong verbs and that would really help. Let's see. How many sources do we need for synthesis? You must have 3. Seriously, before you move on to your next essay, especially if you start with synthesis, please make sure you have clearly cited 3 sources, because if you don't, it severely drops your score. I tell my students to try for 4 just as like a cushion, but you need a minimum of 3. And remember that like it's different sources. So if I cite source A and B in my first body paragraph, and then I only cite source B again in my second body paragraph, I have 3 citations, but I do not have 3 sources. So you need 3 distinct sources for that one. What vocabulary words would be helpful for us to know? Okay, a couple come to mind. You need to know what exigence is, because sometimes they put that in the multiple choice. If you know Space Cat, you know exigence. But exigence is like the catalyst or the impetus. It's like literally like what prompted them to speak or to write, the immediate cause. You should know the word colloquial. I can't promise it's going to be on the test, but it comes up sometimes in multiple choice. Colloquial is like common talk, like common language or slang kind of stuff. I have a video on my channel of some common words to know. I think I have like 2 videos. I'm blanking right now off the top of my head as far as like words that come up a lot, but those are 2 that come up. For transition words, I said this previously, but subsequently means after. That one's kind of confusing. And moreover means like furthermore. So those are some that I've seen come up multiple times that students might want to know. Okay, let's see. What should we do if we cannot find any rhetorical choices? Talk about word choice and tone, because that's always there. And if you can't think of a rhetorical choice, you do not need a fancy name for it. Just describe what they are doing, and that is usually enough. Can you explain synthesis? Very briefly, I will. I do have a video of this on my channel that's going to go into a lot more detail. So just type in Coach Hall writes, what is a synthesis essay or something to that, and it like effect, and it should pop up. But a synthesis essay is kind of like a DBQ if you're in a push or AP world. You're given 6 to 8 sources, and you have to use those sources as evidence to support your argument. You need at least 3. You do not get any bonus points for using all the sources, but it's like a research paper. Like you're using the sources to support your argument. Any rhetorical analysis tips? I have tons on my channel. The best tip I can give you for rhetorical analysis is make sure that you connect your rhetorical choice that you're talking about to the message, argument, or purpose. So how does this choice that you're analyzing, how does that help them convey their message, develop their argument, or achieve their purpose? All right, let me answer a couple more from YouTube before I sign off, and I'll try to come back on later tonight in like another hour. Another word for uses. Just don't use uses. Just say the verb. So instead of like uses repetition, some students will be like utilizes or employs. Don't use those words. Just say repeats, if that makes sense. Do you have any tips for hooks? So for synthesis, you can kind of talk about like the general issue and why it's important. Hooks are not necessary. I think a lot of people put way too much pressure on themselves for hooks. Um, for rhetorical analysis, a universal truth can work. Honestly, if you are pressed for time, don't worry about a hook. Just write a thesis. Which essay should we write first? Okay. Prioritize your strengths. Most students do start with synthesis because it's the most time consuming. If you are stronger at argument than rhetorical analysis, you might choose to do synthesis, argument, rhetorical analysis. If you're strong with rhetorical analysis, you might choose to do that one first or do it in order, like synthesis, rhetorical analysis, argument. Prioritize your strengths. If you feel equally strong at all the essays, look at them tomorrow before you start writing and just kind of see like which one you feel most connection to and start there. But that's kind of the gist of it, is like prioritize your strengths because everybody's different. Most people start with synthesis though. Yeah, someone said you don't need conclusions, but it's helpful for sophistication. That's true. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to get it. Sophistication is super rare, but I have a couple conclusion videos too. But the biggest thing for a conclusion is like, don't just restate your thesis. If you're worried that it's not defensible, then please restate it in different words. But the conclusion, we want to try to like extend the issue and really think about why it matters. So if it's rhetorical analysis, why is the message or argument relevant today? Or if it's like a historically significant thing, what is the historical significance? If synthesis, argument, you can talk about like, why the issue is relevant, real world connections, the implications, short-term, long-term impact, stuff like that. But seriously, if you are running out of time, conclusion is the first thing you should omit from your essay. It is not in the rubric. So it is okay to have an unfinished essay or like what we'd consider unfinished. Any tips on what I should focus on if you're on a block schedule and you haven't done it? If you typically scored threes or fours on your essays, the biggest difference is going to be your commentary. I would look at College Board released essays, type in College Board past exam prompts, and you can see student samples and scoring commentaries. Read the higher scoring essays. So if it's the new rubric, 4 out of 6 or higher. If it's the old rubric, a 5 out of 9 or higher. And really focus on their commentary because that's the make it or break it point. Okay, so I am so sorry to end this so suddenly, but I do have a session that I have to go to, but I will be back online in an hour. So if you want to hop back on in an hour, please feel free to do so. I'll be on both YouTube and TikTok. If you are needing to go to bed, please prioritize your sleep. Feel free to watch any YouTube videos. I will be getting up super early tomorrow to try to answer any last minute comments on YouTube, but I can't promise I get to all of them. But I will come back in an hour to answer more questions. If I missed yours, I'm so sorry. But yeah, I'll be back in an hour. But thank you so much for joining me, and I will hopefully see you in an hour. But good luck tomorrow, everybody. You're going to do great. You're more than a number. You've got this. So yeah, sleep well tonight if you're going to bed.